Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another video, a live stream. How's everyone doing? I hope you're all doing well. Let's make sure everything's up and running. Warm the live stream up. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Again, welcome back to another live stream. I hope all of you are doing well. I see I have a few people already who have been waiting. Thank you so much for everyone who's been waiting, and thank you for everyone who is joining us. I hope you had or are having a good Friday, a relaxing Friday with a nice weekend ahead. I released a couple of videos today, and I have another video coming up at 11. But this live stream is primarily to discuss the Israeli retaliation. I'm not sure what to call it exactly. I mean, people are calling it Israeli, but did Israel admit that they committed it? They haven't. So there were reports that Israel attacked Iran, but Israel didn't say that they attacked Iran. As far as I'm concerned, something attacked Iran, someone attacked Iran. If they don't admit, then it could be anyone. And I mean, I think we'll start off with that, really. The reports initially said that it was an external group conducting this supposed attack on Iran. Iran attacked you with over 340 drones and missiles, the biggest drone attack in history of military combat, the biggest drone attack in history. Unprecedented historic attack against Israel, bypassing 5 air defense systems, some of the most advanced air defense systems in the world, of 5 countries. The US, UK, France, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and 6, the Israeli air defense systems. And when we talk about the Israeli air defense systems, not just the Iron Dome, the defense system that intercepts the Iranian attacks, the ballistic attacks, is Arrow 3. Arrow 3 is considered to be one of the most advanced systems in the world. Exoatmospheric hypersonic. 2 to 3 million a missile. Wow. Even with that, you got slapped. You got slapped by Iran. They landed missiles in Israel, in a couple of bases, after all of that. Wow. And how do you attack? If that's Israel, I don't know who committed this attack. Israel didn't admit. Could be them. Anyway, what was this attack? What, a couple of quadcopters. You can buy them on Amazon. Go on Amazon and buy some quadcopters. AA, AAA batteries. You might have larger batteries for the bigger ones. And plant some fireworks on them. And bomb some of them. That was the attack that happened in Iran. Nothing. And we've seen satellite images in Isfahan. Nothing. And I like the Iranian response, by the way. Some of the Iranians responded, 4 people died of laughter. 4 people died of laughter about this supposed Israeli retaliation. And they're not admitting. But let's get into the details. Apparently, a couple of drones, toy drones, I'm not sure where they were made, by someone, I don't know who it is, attacking this Iran. Okay, Isfahan airbase. Nothing. Satellite, nothing. Intercepted, nothing significant. Israel doesn't declare anything. Okay. Are there signs to show that it's Israel? Maybe. Maybe there are signs. What are these signs? That the fact that Syrian air defense systems and Iraqi air defense systems were attacked. Syria confirmed that. Iraq didn't, but we had reports that there was something fell in Iraq. Okay. What was the source? Again, I don't know. Did Israel do it as a cover-up to show as if they actually did it from their own territory? Maybe. Signaling that it's the route to Iran? Perhaps. To say that, okay, we did our bit to show someone that we retaliated? Maybe. And it's being met with ridicule in Israel. Everyone in Israel is ridiculing it. What, Iran is attacking us so much, and is that our retaliation? The only other confirmation that we received that it was actually Israel was a report. Again, that's if you want to trust these reports. So there was a report that report from Italy, that the US said to the G7 countries that Israel told them in the 90th minute that they are conducting an attack against Iran. Obviously, because they have to tell the US, because they told them you have to tell us. They weren't happy with them. Because this Iranian retaliation came because Israel didn't inform the US that they're about to attack the consulate in Syria. That's why Lloyd Austin told them, if you want to attack, inform us. Obviously signaling that they won't participate, and they did not. Everyone gave them a cold shoulder. Including the genocidal maniacs that support them, by the way. Not that they're good. No, they're bad. But they didn't support them. They're reckless, they know that. You can defend them as much as they want, but they're reckless. So that was the confirmation that linked it to Israel. Okay? What did the Iranian foreign minister say, Abdullahian? He said there was a small issue and the media attempt to glorify a minor attempt that hasn't caused damage and didn't result to any casualties. The Iranian attack fulfilled its mission. That's on Israel. He warned Israel again and highlighted the fact that the attack that Iran conducted and it was successful, and that the destabilization in the region is due to Israel. Simple. Okay. Let's say it's Israel. Let's say it is Israel because they didn't confirm. A coward attack, cowardice, full of cowardice, to show that we retaliated. But please don't hit us back, Iran. We learned the lesson. Please don't hit us back. And we just did it to show that we responded with something, but please do not hit us back, Iran. We beg you. This is what they're saying. Clearly, the Iranian attack intimidated them. It set new rules to the game that you cannot get away with attacking anywhere, however you like. And ladies and gentlemen, this is setting the bar up, and this is preparing for a genuine new world order. Multipolar world order. That's it. The days of the US hegemony have ended. Obviously, it was taking time. Ukraine came, and their proxy war there, it started to accelerate it bit by bit. And when it comes to Gaza, that's it. We took it to the next level. We're going into a new multipolar world where the US doesn't dictate everything. If Israel is acting like a scared little chicken, then that's it. And the US and their international cartel full of bullies is acting the same way, and they're petrified of Iran because they know Russia is also with them. That's it. Say bye-bye to the days of the US hegemony across the world, and good riddance. Good riddance. Obviously, that's not to say that everything all of a sudden is gonna completely end all at once. No, but we're getting there, ladies and gentlemen. Israel, that's it. They're going away bit by bit. And the Israelis have no faith in Israel as a country. They lost every ounce of deterrence they have. They were defeated. They were defeated by the heroic resistance in Gaza. They were defeated by the will of the people. And now they got a massive slap from Iran, and they couldn't even reciprocate. They couldn't even hit them at the same level. Imagine how weak they are. A couple of quadcopters, they didn't admit. You don't know where they were launched from. That's it. Cowards. And they're acting like they're still the bullies. Obviously, they're trying to do them a favor by doing more sanctions on Iran, this and that, all nonsense. Forget about that. No one can affect Iran when it comes to sanctions. They bypass everything. Oil, they'll go through a third country. Arms industry, it reached a level where they bypass every system that's by America, by Britain, by Israel, by all of the most sophisticated Middle Eastern air defense systems. What else do you want? And that's with sanctions. What are you going to do now? Put more sanctions? Again, the Iranian people were laughing at it. They said there is no one street in Iran that hasn't been sanctioned now. Alhamdulillah. What are you going to do? Nothing. So it's all a big joke, really. If you want to compare what supposedly Israel, again, we don't know because they didn't commit. If you want an example of what happened today, again, go on Amazon or Alibaba or Temu or something. Go buy you a quadcopter, plant a couple of fireworks on them and launch them in one of your parks. That's the attack that happened. And someone's saying like a paper tiger. They're not even a paper tiger, wow. I don't know how. There's nothing really. No deterrence, nothing. No one's scared of them anymore. They prove that all of their threats are nothing really. And by the way, what led us to this moment again, ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget, it's the Palestinian resistance defeating them. That's number one. If they could get rid of the Palestinian resistance, we wouldn't have been here. You would have seen settlements in Gaza. There are other things to take into consideration, of course, like the Egyptian position against the completely depopulating Gaza, the pressure, right, but only the pressure from the US. It only came after the Palestinian resistance gave them a beating, defeated their army. That's it. They withdrew their army. Their first, supposedly the most sophisticated division, 36, they sent it to Lebanon as if they're going to attack Hezbollah. What are you going to do with Hezbollah? You sank in the sands of Gaza. You're going to be buried in the mountains of Lebanon if you go into Lebanon. What are you going to do? You're not going to do anything. So as the title says, it's all a joke, really. It's a joke. It shows just how weak Israel is. And it shows that we're on our way to a new multipolar world where this arrogance of the US and its little puppets in Europe is long gone. Obviously, the powers. That's it. Rest in peace, ladies and gentlemen. That's the conclusion. Unless you have something prepared, unless that was just like an small act, and now you're preparing for something much bigger than Iran. Are you going to actually do it? Let's see. Let's see who's going to join you. The US said they're not going to join you. What? No one's going to join you. That's it. Finished. And if they do, they're going to have an even bigger response, right? Iran told them, if you retaliate, we will retaliate immediately with much bigger. They didn't admit. From Iran's perspective, they didn't admit. It wasn't Israel then. Matter concluded. That's it. New bar set, new rules to the game, and that's it. That's what we have to say about this joke that is attributed to Israel, according to the media, right? And what else is there to say? If I missed something, tell me. I'd be happy to elaborate. Maybe Mexico next, Nasser. Exactly. Mexico. In reference to Egypt. And Francis is also asking if I think that Israel will try to strike Iran harder. Again, from our perspective, from everyone's perspective, really, it wasn't Israel. They didn't say anything. Was it them? If it is them, then what a pathetic response. Someone launching the 300-400 missiles and UAVs, the biggest attack in history of UAVs, bigger than any Russian attack or whatever, and they're kind of throwing a small stone. If they want to retaliate, show us your power and might. Let's see where that where it results to. They're not prepared. And if Iran just gave them a taster by that, then what are you going to do? And don't forget, Iran supplies these UAVs. They supply them. They sell them. They have probably millions of them. Who knows how many they have? And if they exhausted all of these air defense systems in the Middle East, put by the United States and other countries, the most advanced systems in the world, imagine they did something bigger. Okay, let's send you the cheap UAVs that they manufacture for very cheap prices. They'll exhaust all of your air defense systems, and the hypersonic missiles will wipe Israel off the map. That's what's going to happen. Imdad is asking, what is the situation in Yemen? Yemen, I'm going to release a video after this, and I spoke with you about it in a previous live stream. My assumption is that there's a semi ceasefire going on, and the fire is on very low heat, and it could be to many reasons. I will elaborate in the video. It's going to be published at 11. But in very briefly, what's happening now is showing that there's something going on. There's some sort of a deal without declaration. And my argument, it's not obviously a full ceasefire, but my argument is Israel is actually taking steps that were core demands from Hamas that Israel rejected in the negotiations. What are they? Withdrawal of the majority of the forces. They withdrew all of the fighting forces, kept in a couple of hundreds only. At the biggest point, they had approximately 70,000 battling Israel. So a few hundred, so that's over 95%. Then you opened the aid into North Gaza, an area that you were starving people to death in. That's number 2. Again, another demand from Hamas. Number 3, you're allowing people to the north. That's another demand from Hamas. And you're not declaring that there's any ceasefire. And number 4, they're releasing prisoners. If you haven't seen, by the way, and I know you won't see it on mainstream media a lot, but this is what happened the past couple of weeks. And it's not being published on mainstream media to not show Israel in a weak position and as a side that's giving the Palestinians things, although we don't have a declared ceasefire. But this is what's happening. And why are they doing that? They're doing that so that they can tell their population, because all Netanyahu cares about is his image, when they reach a ceasefire, most likely there will be some sort of a ceasefire at some point, that we didn't give the Palestinians anything but da. Why? Because you gave them everything they want before the ceasefire. And then Netanyahu can save his image. They'll probably have a limited strike on Rafah and tell you, okay, we also attacked Rafah. We also attacked Rafah. And there's another video that I'm going to publish about a statement from a senior figure in the Israeli Foreign and Security Committee, debunking what Netanyahu is saying completely when it comes to the Hamas brigades in Gaza. And that's going to highlight even further that that's it. They're done in Gaza even. And them being done, and that being done to them in Gaza is what's leading us to what's happening at the moment. From the River, he's asking, will Iran use this as a reason to hit Israel again? No. because Israel didn't declare. If you want to look at it from an international perspective, from a legal perspective, from a military perspective, if you haven't admitted, then it's attributed to Israel, again, in media. And a report from Italy saying Blinken told the G7, Israel told us in the 90th second that they're going to retaliate. Clearly, all of them are cowards. They don't want to annoy Iran. They know that they can't defeat Iran, really, and that they'll open a complete new front. It'll be a genuine regional escalation that will accelerate their complete departure from the Middle East. And they need to be kicked out of the Middle East, all of them, all of their bases, all of their colonies, everything. That's it. They're ending in Africa bit by bit, country by country. They're expelling the French forces, the occupiers, the racist neo-colonialists, and they'll get rid of them from the Middle East too. Talal is saying, can you verify if Hamas to hand over its weapons in a two-state solution agreement? Hamas will never hand their weapons. I'm telling you that from now. Hamas will never hand their weapons because they don't trust anyone. And you shouldn't trust anyone. You shouldn't trust the Palestinian Authority led by Mahmoud Abbas. They're collaborators and traitors. And you never trust Israel. Simple. So they won't hand their... until the Palestinians are given their full rights, and there's a state, and that weapon is within a Palestinian national army. They won't give up their weapons. You can forget about it. Neither will the Palestinian resistance, other ones, by the way. PIJ and others, they won't give up their weapons whatsoever. Kate is asking, did Iran downplay the attack from Israel and cover up the hit and collapse of the building? Look, Iran didn't downplay anything. We saw evidence. Like we saw when Iran attacked Israel, we saw the same thing from Iran. What did we see? People recording. We saw the recording. It looked like a firefly. It looked like a firefly in the sky, or an Amazon quadcopter that you get with a small firework. And where was it launched from? We don't know. Israel, I don't know, some ISIS-related group to Israel. You know, ISIS and Israel are one. That's it. So they didn't downplay it. If the Iranians posted videos, you have online, so okay, let's not put faith in anyone. I don't trust Iran, I don't trust Israel, I don't trust anyone. Don't we trust the average normal person carrying a phone and recording something? This is how we get the information from Gaza. And that's what we saw. A couple of fireflies and quadcopters that you can buy from Amazon or Alibaba. You can even get bigger ones. If you put a bigger firework on one of them, it'll look like a bigger explosion than what we saw in Iran. Jessica, thank you so much for your super thanks, by the way, and Sailor Jerry Swallow. Jerry's saying, I'm so mixed up, I have no idea what is going on there. Exactly what I told you. Exactly what I told you. Mind over matter. Hi, Mahmoud. In Iran in general said that Iran is rethinking its strategy regarding nukes. Any other words might go down a nuclear road and have nukes in 2 weeks. What's your thoughts? Iran has had a nuclear technology for a very long time. Ever since the late 2000s, Iran had the capability to reach a nuclear bomb if they wished. Okay? I hate wars and I hate nuclear bombs. Let me make that clear. We don't want war, we don't want nuclear weapons. But the arrogant superpowers, the arrogant racist neo-colonial powers, they prove to the world that everything is done by force. They go and bully the whole world by force. So what does that result to? People having to defend themselves, including by preemptive strikes sometimes. This is how the world works. However, based on the current world order, is Iran entitled to have nuclear weapons? Of course they are. God forbid, we don't want anyone using it against anyone. because it's most certain that innocent people will die. So we want to get rid of that horrible weapon. And again, you're worried about Iran. Who used nuclear weapons? The US on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing 250,000 people. Area is still suffering to this day. Are you afraid of Iran? What are you afraid from with Iran? They attacked their historical foe, their historical enemy, Israel, on a military base. They didn't even target Israeli civilians or Israeli cities like they do to Gaza, genocide. Or like they do through other groups, not directly ISIS in Iran, killing innocent people. So who are we worried about when it comes to nuclear weapon? The countries that already have it. And not all of them, primarily the US. That's the worrying country. And how many warheads do they have? 6,000, 7,000? That's petrifying. They can destroy the whole world several times with the amount of nuclear weapons they have. And again, like, why don't we talk about the Israeli nuclear? They apparently have at least 300 nuclear warheads leaked by an Israeli called Mordechai Vanunu, who was kidnapped later on after the leak. So what? And they proved that they're capable of committing a genocide. And they spoke about the potential of landing a nuclear bomb on Gaza. These are the people we should be worried about when it comes to nuclear weapons. And I know in general it's for deterrence, right? Because everyone knows the score. Soon as a nuclear weapon is deployed, that's it. The other country most likely knows immediately, and they will have similar action, and everyone is dead. Egbertina, thank you so much. She said, free Palestine from Zionism. Thank you so much for your super thanks. Talal is asking, would the de-escalation with Iran now open up the northern front against Hezbollah? You see, Hezbollah have been still conducting very sophisticated attacks, like the one that I spoke about 2 days ago, when they attacked a command surveillance center in the Western Galilee with a direct UAV recorded. So that UAV had a camera and it was recorded landing, and everyone fell casualties within this command unit in Israel. They initially said 9, then 14, and today they said it was actually 19, 6 of which are in a very bad condition from that attack. And Israel is still attacking in Lebanon as well. Obviously not the most intense days, but you have very specific attacks. I don't necessarily think it will escalate to a large extent in Lebanon up until they completely quieten everything down in Gaza. However, what we do need to bear in mind is the fact that their big division that was fighting in Gaza is now out of Gaza. And when Division 36 went out of Gaza, it went immediately to Lebanon. It consists of the Golani Brigade that has experience in Lebanon, failed experience, but it's likely that Israel will deploy this division in Lebanon as well if they're planning for something big, but they need to quieten Gaza down. However, I mean, if you look at it again, if you want to talk about it from a military perspective, purely a military perspective, you prove that you're incapable of defeating a couple of dozen thousands of fighters from Hamas. What are you going to do with Hezbollah? Do you think the tunnel system in Lebanon is less sophisticated than Gaza? Not to undermine, clearly Gaza is so sophisticated. They defeated Israel. There is no other way to describe it but defeating Israel. And defeat isn't based on the destruction of civil infrastructure and civilian casualties. That's not how military defeat or win is calculated. It's by achieving or not achieving your military objectives. What are the military objectives? The military objectives for Israel are defeating the Hamas, eliminating the Hamas, not just defeating, eliminating them. Then making sure Gaza doesn't ever pose a threat again, and getting back their kidnapped people. Did they achieve any of that? No. They only achieved one thing through negotiation, not through war, which is getting some of their kidnapped people from Gaza through negotiations with Hamas. They have achieved nothing by military force. And even if they get rid of the whole population in Gaza, Hamas will remain there because they're in the tunnels. Ahmad K, thank you so much for your super. Salam ila bilad ahl al-Sham, ahla wa sahla. Imdad Kazim Mahmoud, when will Pakistan wake up? Pakistan is facing similar problems to many of the Arab states. You have Imran Khan imprisoned. Anyone who gets democratically elected is either assassinated or imprisoned. Egypt, military coup. Pakistan, coup. Other countries, coup. That's what happens when you have some sort of democracy in the Middle East. Backed by who? By the people who call for democracy. Why? Because that democracy doesn't suit them. Selective democracy. If the democracy brings someone they like, then they will hail democracy from now up until forever. If democracy brings someone they don't like, oh no, they were a security threat, they were this threat. A threat to what? To your hegemony? Just because they don't want to submit to you and don't want to be part of this international cartel that you're running? Michelle, thank you. And Daniela, thank you for your supers. Michelle is asking, why does Israel recognize Kosovo but not Palestine? Because it's far away. Palestine is too close to home. Again, they don't recognize Palestine, by the way. If you read what Israelis say, some of them, the thinkers, and to them, politicians, people in power, to them, Palestine doesn't exist. Palestine is a made-up name to them. And there is no such thing as Palestinian people. Their argument is the people who live in Palestine are Arabs who immigrated. And their argument for that are family names. Like there's one Israeli thinker, his name is Kedar, Mordechai Kedar. This man argues that he was one of those people who promoted an Emirates for Palestine. I imagine the neo-colonial racist tone. It's because they think in a tribal way. So we'll give them Emirates instead of a state. This is how their mind operates. Anyway, this guy says, and then many people in Israel believe that there is no such thing as Palestinian people, because look at the names of the Palestinian families in Palestine, in historical Palestine. And he will mention names like Al-Masri, for example, the Egyptian in Arabic, or other names of towns that relate to some Arab states, ignoring the fact that many Palestinian families' names are named after Palestinian towns and cities inside of historical Palestine. But this is how these people think. They will do everything to create this pseudo-narrative and nothing is established on actual facts. So to them, Palestine is too close to home and they don't recognize the Palestinian people. Therefore, they don't admit that they are Palestinian. They're just Arabs. As if the Ashkenazis who immigrated from Europe last century were the original owners of the land. Therefore, having to change their names, their family names, by the way, including the first Israeli prime minister and his successors, and Benjamin Netanyahu, Milikovsky, you know that by now. David Ben Gurion, his Ben Gurion, right? Son of Gurion in Hebrew. His original family name was Grun. Moshe Sharet. Shertok. Changed it to Sharet. And you have many more examples. People changing their names to suit the narrative, to suit the country. Brian Bean, assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for your super thanks. Shazad Ahmed is saying, brothers and sisters, if Pakistan was responsible for these drone attacks against Iran, then I'm ashamed to be called a British Pakistani, because a British and Pakistanis are in bed together. I assume you obviously mean the governments and the people in power. But listen, there is no confirmation that it was released from Pakistan, right? And again, all of this is media talk that even Israel did it. And again, from a military perspective, they didn't admit. Done deal. But obviously now the Iran haters and the attack deniers will tell you, oh, look, this is a proof that it's all a game. A proof that it's all a game. Instead of looking how things are historically changing. And you're talking about bed with, they're in bed with the Zionists, these people. Anything but to admit that Iran did something, for whatever reason. It's a game. Everything that Iran does is a game. Everything that Hezbollah does is a game. It's an act to them. FP, shame on the USA for vetoing a draft resolution at the NSC, which recommended granting Palestinian full membership at the UN. Why? Are they not interested in a two-state solution? You see, that's the thing. They pay lip service with the two-state solution. Although we are against the two-state solution, we're looking for a one equal state, which is the true, genuine, long-lasting, peaceful, equal, just solution. But even with the two-state solution, they're only paying lip service. They spoke about two states for centuries. Now, okay, decades, let's say, not century, but they've been talking about it since 1948. Everyone, two-state, 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 two-state. What did you do when Israel was expanding in this supposed Palestinian state? All of these years, 30 years of expansions in the West Bank, of an apartheid regime, military, martial law on the Palestinians, full Israeli rights to the settlers, who are not even natives, who stole the lands and built on top of them, funded by the US. It's absurd. It just highlights the hypocrisy and the lies. Native Waiter, thank you for your super very much. You said, does Egypt see all of Rafah as their city, seeing that the border splits the town in two? Well, you see, historically, Egypt was in control of Gaza a very long time ago. Then Rafah, obviously you have the Egyptian Rafah and the Palestinian Rafah. And many people are family members, historically, really. And the Egyptian side has a lot of sensitivity when it comes to Rafah, and with Israel being on the border with them. That's why they were very vocal against any action in Rafah. Why? Because historically, despite the shameful positions, despite the fact that they're not dealing with it to the level that we want them to do and all of these things, although to be fair, they haven't stated like other people, like they were willing to intervene militarily and have it. They've only spoke diplomacy, which is, again, not really justified. You should use leverage. There's a genocide going on. However, with regards to Gaza, the military ideology in Egypt, in the establishment, was very much highlighted by the previous, now late, Egyptian head of intelligence during the Mubarak era. His name was Omar Suleiman. Omar Suleiman, in closed meetings, used to say that we need Hamas in Gaza. We need a strong Gaza. Although everything that you see, right, on top of the surface. He used to say in closed doors, we need a strong Hamas in Gaza. We need a strong body in Gaza. Why do you need it? To keep Israel busy. This is their philosophy. They know Israel is their historical enemy. I know they have a treaty with them and this and that, but they had a war with them. Why? Because Israel stole their land. They occupied Sinai for a very long time. And if you want to talk about this Judaism and this whole lie of a narrative, Sinai is supposed to be more important than Jerusalem. Where did you have the 10 Commandments? in Sinai, right? Not in Jerusalem. And that's why it highlights how much of a lie it is, this whole Jewish thing when it comes to Israel. That's just using Judaism as a front for a neo-colonial, neo-fascist, racist, apartheid, neo-colonial entity. But they know them. So the Egyptians know the historical situation between them and Israel. They know their enemies. We have a peace treaty. Did the people have peace? No. They didn't have peace. Why? Because they know you're a foreign entity occupying Arab land, Arab and Muslim land to them, right? So they are very cautious. They don't like Israel. What, are we going to say that they like Israel now? And let's be very clear. And again, don't misinterpret my talk, because some people like to clip things, okay? Not to justify the position, not to say that they're amazing or whatever. But if it wasn't for Egypt's position, particularly in the beginning of the war, and them not allowing Israel to ethnically cleanse the Gazans to Egypt, despite the fact that they've received big offers, tens of billions, if not hundreds, and taking off their international debt, we wouldn't have been here. Why? Because they know what Israel's up to. They will send the Gazan population to Sinai. The population in Sinai, if they were expelled, do you think they will love Israel from Sinai? They will hate the living daylight out of it and will do anything to go back to their land. What will happen then? Then Sinai will be a hub against Israel. Therefore, who's in charge? Egypt as a state. Therefore, what can happen? All of Egypt is a legitimate target. They know that. They know that argument. Despite all of the bad positions and whatever, what have you, they know that argument in Egypt. And then Israel will tell them, Cairo is a legit target, not just Sinai. Because they have plans for Sinai. Like I quoted an Israeli previous official figure in the Aman. Aman in Hebrew is the military intelligence directorate in Israel. This man was in charge of a unit in Amman over a decade ago. He was in charge of monitoring the infrastructure in Arab countries, seeing what they do. Imagine, they want to know what Arab countries do in their infrastructure. This guy revealed that Egypt has over 60 tunnels. Some of them can fit buses inside them, probably airplanes. And he claimed that Egypt prepared them as attack missions and to hinder any potential attack in Sinai. Imagine, indirectly admitting that they have plans to potentially attack Sinai at one point, right? That's why Egypt was wary of that, and they filled Sinai with the military forces against all of their agreements with Israel according to the Camp David Accords. And the same person said Egypt breached every line in the Camp David Accords with us. Why? Because Sinai should be a demilitarized zone. And now they have all of their military in them, over 100,000 troops, heavy equipment. That was increased in the last week just by hearing about a potential attack in Rafah. Not that they weren't ready, but they were ready. That's from an Egyptian perspective. That's from an Egyptian military perspective. People need to understand that. Again, don't misinterpret that as a justification to what they're doing with Gaza, or even respecting the treaty that they have with Israel with regards to the Rafah crossing. And even with the Rafah crossing, Israel gave Egypt at least 10 offers. Dozens, according to some Egyptian reports, about Rafah. Firstly, increase security. Give us access to the security cameras from you. And Egyptians told them, we'll increase the security, but we won't give you access to anything. Secondly, make another barrier. They didn't make another barrier. Move Rafah crossing to Karm Abu Salim, which is on the Israeli-Gaza-Egyptian border. But Israel will have access to it and monitor everything. The Egyptians refused. Every week they came up with a proposal for Egypt. Do this, do that, do this, do that. But they know what they're up to. They know what they're up to. And one of the biggest things that also delayed the Rafah campaign, apart from the Palestinian resistance standing up against Israel, Israel's military being incapable, all of that argument is the Egyptian position when it came to Rafah. Why? Because Israel wanted to completely ethnically cleanse Rafah, push them to Egypt. Egypt took countermeasures. Therefore, Israel thought, okay, all right, plan B even won't work. And they don't have a plan C. What's the plan C going to be? Now they're getting people back to North Gaza. That's it. They're admitting defeat. Because to them, the plan was get rid of the civilian population from the north, bring them down to the south. When they go down to the south, we bomb the border, we bomb them from the back. They are forced to go to Egypt. Egypt knows that. Egypt knows that very, very well. And obviously these measures, they prevented Israel going to Rafah. And now they've been talking for 4 months, saying that there's a brigade. And again, with the coming video, I'm going to show you how the senior figures in Israel are admitting that Hamas is not. All of their brigades are fine. What are you talking about? Kenneth Himes, there has to be accountability for what the IDF and the EU and the UK and the US are doing. The future of all humanity depends on it. You see, what has to be is something really obvious. What has to be, like the basic has to be is equality, right? Who do any of you argue with the concept of equality between human beings? Any reasonable person who values human life equally won't have a problem with the concept of equality. So before that, and what you're saying is true, there has to be equality. There is no equality. Who is backing this inequality? The same countries that you mentioned. Inequality, even though they bang on about equality. Promoting democracy, values, equality, human rights. Hell, you have the Declaration of Human Rights in the UN. They supported the Palestinian UN resolutions for a Palestinian state, for the right of return for the refugees, supporting the 1987 Palestinian uprising, calling it heroic, saying that countries should support it, shaming countries that don't, ink on paper. Now, though, that they're met by force, clearly the language that they understand, they start taking steps back bit by bit, like Israel. Like Israel as a representation to this neo-colonial racist mentality in the Middle East. Why do they support them? They have an extension to their ideology. They sympathize with them. They sympathize with supremacy. They understand the notion. They understand the motivation. Why? Because they committed it all across the world. The US, European countries, in Africa, in the Middle East, in Latin America, in many nations, with many different backgrounds, by the way. If you talk about Latin America, they're mostly Christian nations, Christian Catholic nations. Asia, Vietnam, Buddhists. But it's this neo-colonial mentality. We're entitled for everything in the world. This is how, but when they get a beating, when they're met with confrontation, because they don't give you your rights when you ask for it, that's it. And look at the Palestinian case. The Palestinian Authority has been negotiating with them for 31 years since the Oslo Accords to have a state. What did they achieve? Further expansion from 100 to 900,000 settlers in the last 30 years. More land grabbing. They put a wall inside Palestinian territory, stealing more land, making life misery for people, implementing an apartheid regime. Scordo, thank you so much for your super. Does any state actor support the one-state solution? The entity known as a state of lacks all legitimacy. Would you appear at the Duran? the countries, officially, most of the global countries, they support a two-state solution. The countries that support a one-state solution, they haven't elaborated enough as to how they view this one-state solution. So many countries will, like if you talk about Iran, for example, they will tell you the Zionist entity, it's illegitimate, you need to liberate Palestine, which is a strong argument because it was occupied by Zionists. The one-state solution that the Palestinians, or some of the Palestinians, have been talking about ever since 1948, for some reason, it's not embraced by many countries, which raises the question, why? Why don't you support the one-state solution? It's because anyone who's talking about the two-state solution is supporting the neo-colonial empire notion with regards to Palestine. Why? I'll tell you why. Because this whole conflict was made by the British Empire, not just in Palestine, but in other countries as well, in Middle Eastern countries, in African nations, in between India and Kashmir, all of these. Why? To keep the people fighting. Divide and rule, typical empire acts. What would happen if you would have a two-state solution? The talk about a two-state solution, it excludes the right to return. If you don't have a right to return, and when I talk about a right to return, the Palestinians who were expelled from 1948 occupied territories, which is now modern-day Israel, 7 million. Now, where are they going to go back to? Gaza? They weren't born in Gaza. They want to go back to their land. Would Israel allow them back? No. Why? Because they need a Jewish supremacy. They want the Jewish demographic to be far higher than the Palestinian demographics, which is translated by what they're doing in Gaza. Why are they doing what they're doing in Gaza, this genocide attempt? Because since 2015, between the Jordan River to the sea, you have a majority Palestinian population between the river and the sea, with more and more Israelis immigrating, going to other countries, better countries than this racist, I don't want to say the word hole, but that's what's happening. Now, their option was depopulate Gaza. Depopulate Gaza, you'll get rid of 2.3 million, will be at a better demographic. Jewish demographics will increase again. We will have, and we will worry about it maybe 40, 50 years down the line. And they have plans for the West Bank, by the way, and they have plans for the Palestinians inside of Israel, and they made it clear. Bezalel Smotrich, a man in the government at the moment, he said 2 years ago to a Palestinian member of the Israeli Knesset that Ben-Gurion made the mistake in 1948, he should have expelled all of you. Imagine someone sitting in any European parliament, I don't know, New Zealand, or saying to the original population, you know what, my ancestors, when they created this country, they made a mistake, they should have got rid of all of you. This mentality controls Israel. This mentality controls Israel, implements policies and acts, and it's supported by who? By nations who bang on 24/7 about democracy and human rights, up until it reaches a point where it makes them uncomfortable. Then they will support authoritarianism, drug cartels, mobs, everything. They are one. Justin Green, can you please elaborate on your comparison of Israel to ISIS, stating that they were the same? Beautiful. What does ISIS call for? Firstly, what is ISIS made out of? Who formed ISIS? This man with the pseudonym, by the way, of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, maliciously put there to defame the honorable Khalifa Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. To bad name Islam, typical. Anytime you hear the word terror, you imagine a man with a beard and a turban. They planted that in your head. They've been doing that for over 20 years. However, who is he? This man was a man imprisoned in Iraq. Okay? He was under a special status imprisoned by the American forces in Iraq. He was released all of a sudden. Firstly, what was that special status? That's number one. Two, if he was such a dangerous person supporting these militias or whatever it is in Iraq, why'd you release him for no reason? He gets released, he creates this ISIS movement that all of a sudden controls the Middle East. Why? Because they want to impose their religious view, twisted religious view, in their minds on all of the population. Israel's doing that. Just telling you. Religious supremacy. I have the rights because I follow X religion. The only difference is the difference between religions. What's terrorism? Enforcing an ideology, not only by the use of force, by the way, but by intimidation too. Israel's been using every type of intimidation to impose its will on the original people of the land, let alone by committing a genocide now in Gaza. That's why we compare Israel to ISIS. Obviously, apart from many other evidence showing that this group was full of international intel. And look at what they did. What did they do all across their history, ISIS? Attack any country that the US and Israel don't like. Did they attack American interests, ladies and gentlemen? Did they attack Israel? They were beheading Hamas members, ISIS. Who does that serve? You think about it this way. I don't care what you call yourself. That's why I don't look at it from a religious perspective. Who are you serving? Who are you serving? What are you doing? ISIS serves the US interests. Clear. So that's why I compare them to ISIS. Gary Tate, what is your opinion on the Yasin rockets that the Palestinian resistance is using? Well, the Yasin is not a rocket. You can call it a rocket, but it's an RPG shell. They're very effective. The Yasin 105, they managed to destroy over 1,200 Israeli machinery in Gaza with the Yasin 105, handmade in Gaza. Handmade in Gaza. And they knew who they named it after. Their spiritual leader, who was martyred by Israeli missiles. He was in a wheelchair. He was just going out of Fajr prayer with his two sons, going to have breakfast. They shot him. And they killed his successor 2 months later. What happened to Hamas? They just became stronger and stronger and stronger. This whole killing and bloodlust, what does it result to? People hating you more. People believing that they should end you. Because all you did is cause them misery. Right? But they've been very, very effective, and they've been probably the most effective weapons that the Palestinians used. Obviously, there's a massive variety of other weapons the Palestinian resistance used that was extremely effective when it comes to resisting Israel during this genocide. But the highlight is the Yasin 105. You have the other side bombs and devices that are very sophisticated in terms of how they pop and explode, and we spoke about them previously. But the Yasin 105 proved to be a very, very, very effective weapon in the hands of the Palestinian resistance. Nasimul Khan, do you think Israel might launch a stronger attack on Iran after yesterday's attack, as Netanyahu wants to provoke a greater war in the region to prolong his political career? You see, that notion is understood. That notion of Benjamin Netanyahu wanting to provoke a greater war in the region to prolong his political career is understood by his biggest supporter, which is the US. And although the US and the EU support Israel as a neo-colonialist, supremacist, violent, terrorist entity, a genocidal satanic death cult, as I like to describe it, they don't want someone like Netanyahu leading it. That's why from the beginning of this genocide, we've been saying they're worried about Israel's image more than the Israelis themselves. Why? Because to them, it's their little neo-colonial puppet, their little racist supremacy in the Middle East. We don't want to get rid of it. So he was happy when Iran attacked them. If you see his first statement after the attack, he was happy, Benjamin Netanyahu. He thought, okay, we might have something. Joe Biden immediately gave him a cold shoulder. He told him, look at how the defense was. You got to win, take the win. And immediately stated the US won't participate in Israeli retaliation. Immediate cold shoulder. Then he had the other clowns going to visit him from Germany and the UK, the German foreign minister and the clown Cameron. He went, call him Lord Cameron. Lord what? Astaghfirullah. This man's a clown. He went to Israel, but they also told him don't escalate with that. Right? So this is what happened with him. And what is he going to do now? Attack? Forget about it. He's not going to attack anything. And let us see his attack. Let us see what he can do. Score the 2 states is wrong. They didn't. Firstly, thank you for your super thanks very much. I really appreciate you guys. 2 states is wrong. They didn't support it for South Africa either, especially with the UN borders. 1 state is the way to go, inshallah. Absolutely, I agree with you. And it's very important that you mentioned South Africa because so many things resemble, although we appreciate the unique and the specific situation of Palestine, and we should differentiate between Palestine and South Africa, even at an apartheid level. I mean, in many cases, Israel's worse than South Africa. But when it comes to South Africa, remember the days of South Africa. You had the same case. The British government was supporting apartheid. They were imprisoning everyone protesting to end apartheid. They were calling Nelson Mandela a terrorist. Does this remind you of anything? It reminds you of what's happening now. And tomorrow, when this ends and when Palestine is liberated, they will be doing the same thing with Hamas and with Palestine. And they will be ashamed that they even supported this genocide for one day. They would want history to erase this, but history won't erase this. Everything will be documented. Everything is documented and will continue to be documented. And these people who are taking this position to this day of not just only supporting blatantly, but covering up, don't underestimate the maliciousness and evilness of covering up a genocide, which is what many people in the mainstream media do, who act like they're journalists. And you're seeing the leaks bit by bit from CNN and other news networks about them being indoctrinated and them having to use a certain terminology when it comes to Palestine and not using it with Israel. The biggest news agencies in the world do that to this day. If they want to talk about Israel, it's as if it's a given. If the Palestinians say something, they'll tell you it's a Hamas-led authority said that. Hamas-run health ministry. Really? Why? To undermine what they're saying. To cast doubt on everything that they say. Why? Because they demonized Hamas. And then they tell you they're saying it. Although there is no proof that Hamas lied, ever, by the way. Show me an instance where Hamas lied. Do we have evidence that Israel lied, though? That the IDF lied? They're hyper-pathological liars. And again, just to remind you, the medical term pathological liar is someone who lies consistently 5 times a day for 6 months. That's why we call them hyper. They're way above that. They've been lying more than they breathe for the past century. Right? That's the situation with them. Talal Mansour, how do you view the Indonesian and Malaysian roles in the Middle East current conflict? Look, they might pay lip service. They might show support. Obviously, the people support. I mean, don't get me wrong. When we talk about countries, the people support, like the American people, they support. And they're very brave with their support. People in Britain, people in other European countries, people in the Arab world, people in Asia, people support. The governments, though, it's limited. And even if you hear the governments talking about some sort of support, the action is limited for many reasons. Some of the boundaries that they have is geographical boundaries, like the geographical distance prevents them from taking significant action to do something, right? Then you have the fact that they're allied with countries that support Israel, for example, and they might have ties with them indirectly, and they don't want to show it to their population because any any person with an ounce of brain and a functioning moral compass will oppose this entity. So in terms of people, we get a lot of support. I have people here, many people, supporting and stuff. But in terms of governments, they're limited, and like many other countries, really. Nelson Mandela, how the world leaders were desperate to reach his funeral. Exactly. We might have the same situation with the Hamas leaders 10, 20, 30 years down the line. Do all things. Thank you so much for your super thanks. You're saying, do you think that isn't real? So the writing on the wall that the US is in such a decline after, I imagine that's decline after the Ukraine, that 7th of October was the time to strike, while it's still good for its latest genocidal land grab. Look, when we talk about the 7th of October, let's elaborate a couple of things here. There was definitely meticulous planning from Hamas. They were definitely planning to do something. They even had a TV program about them attacking. They had banners warning the Israelis from Gaza. So there was something happening, okay? Was Israel that incompetent? I'm not gonna overestimate them. I don't like overestimating them. But they had some sort of signs, okay? We had a report that Egypt notified them that something was about to happen. An Israeli female soldier said that she noticed suspicious moves from Gaza on the 6th of October. She notified her commander. They didn't take action. There were cameras. Everything was... Did Israel ignore all of that for Benjamin Netanyahu so that an attack could happen, albeit without knowing the scale of it, so that he can unite the nation that was divided after his judicial reform to attack Gaza and prolong his period and make him out as the eternal king of Israel? Maybe. Okay, maybe, perhaps. Did they anticipate the level? Probably not. Probably not. Did Hamas collaborate with Israel? No. That didn't happen. However, Israel definitely saw an opportunity. Israel did see an opportunity. However, they miscalculated everything with that opportunity. And they made very big mistakes. And the biggest mistake they did is lose the global remnants of a sympathy that they had. If Israel, if that happened, and Israel, again, I gave that example before, I'll give it again. Let's say I'm Israel, God forbid, I'm Israel, and I am a supremacist, and I believe that I am God's chosen people, and the other people are goyim and subhuman, okay? And I care only about my people, supposedly, right? For argument's sake, because they are even liars with that, okay? But hey, let's take that argument. Hamas just conducted a massive operation. The world is calling it a terrorist attack. They indeed started it, and there are Israelis in Gaza. The world is sympathizing with me, or at least the ill-informed world, okay? Because anyone who had any ounce of knowledge about the history of Palestine, they would never buy the official narrative. They would suspect everything, and they would understand that the Palestinian action didn't come out of a vacuum, okay? But let's say that's the case. I'm Israel, I'm a supremacist, I care about my own people. Hamas kidnapped them. Hamas, please release my hostages or prisoners, okay? So again, no one clips and thinking, okay? Release my prisoners or prisoners of war, and I will release prisoners because I care about my people. Then after Hamas release them, I'll attack them. But at least I have my people. Israel did the contrary. They started killing their people as they were going to Gaza. And they committed a mass genocide. In the process, many people switched, they did a 180 on Israel. just a few weeks down the line. And many people said that to me. 180. And we know they were ill-informed about Israel previously, but that's a different subject. And then, okay, you're noticing a shift. Not that you cared that much, but let's say you're noticing a shift. Take a step back. No, they didn't. They continued with a genocide in front of everyone. So that was the biggest mistake that they did. They miscalculated it. They also miscalculated the US support. Now, don't forget that the US brought its aircraft carrier in the first few days. Why did they bring it? As deterrence. Deterrence to who? According to the US, to Hezbollah and Iran. Then they took it out. Then they withdrew it. 40-something days into the genocide. Why? Because they clearly had some sort of talks with Israel. We're giving you 40 to 50 days to get rid of Hamas, and if you can't, that's it. We need to change plan. It came, temporary ceasefire came. They were hoping to prolong it. That didn't happen. America told them, I'm taking off my aircraft carrier. Again, they continued with this stubbornness. They continued to attack. They continued to commit genocide, starvation, disregarding their biggest. So they miscalculated everything. And now they're in the worst situation they have been in history. It's an existential threat. It's an existential threat, and anyone with an ounce of logic in Israel knows that. And I've quoted many people who were previously in the intelligence and military community and establishments in Israel who said the same thing. The previous head of the Mossad, Tamir Parar, he said, if we continue down this path, and that's over 3 months ago, we're doomed. Another one said, we need to reach a deal dictated by Sinwar. Ladies and gentlemen, we have no other option. But you have Benjamin Netanyahu. So they miscalculated everything. It didn't go to plan, and they're losing miserably. They're failing miserably. And no one's going to help them. Deep Diver is saying, isn't the obligation of Al-Azhar, for those of you who don't know, is the religious establishment in Egypt that is somewhat of a religious establishment that is primarily for Islamic knowledge, right? In the Muslim world, at least to the majority of the Sunni Islamic world, but you have obviously Wahhabism and what have you. You said, isn't the obligation of Al-Azhar to at least advise the Egyptian ruler to open the border at this extremely dire situation? Islamically, the Shia clergy decreed to pick up arms during the ISIS attack. Well, he was very vocal, to be fair, Sheikh Al-Azhar. He said a lot of things, and it wasn't enough for the people in power to change. And when we talk about the religious establishment, when you talk about both, all really, Sunni, Shia, and other religious scholars, they're divided. It's not like the clergy in Iran is different. Like typically in the mainstream Shia understanding is that they shouldn't take action until the Mahdi comes, this fictional figure that has no background in Islam, but many people believe it. But anyway, they decided to take a different approach. Their approach, after the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood on the religious establishment in Iran, they said, no, we can take action. We can take action up until that happens. And that started to become interpreted and implemented by the Islamic revolution leaders in Iran. Saying that, their counterparts from the Sunni world, they also are divided. You're talking about, I mean, we talk about Islam, 2 billion followers. You'll have many different interpretations, right? So you'll have people on both sides interpreting things very differently. Like even if you look at Lebanon, for example. In Lebanon, one of the most vocal voices against Hezbollah, is a man named Subh al-Tufaili. Subh al-Tufaili was the Secretary General of Hezbollah. And he has a very different approach to what Hezbollah is doing in terms of the religious authority of Iran. Right? There are lots of differences. However, the religious establishments in the Muslim world, they're in many cases controlled by politics. They don't speak out of their own free will. They are controlled by politics. They're controlled by the political leader, by the king. Like if you look at Saudi Arabia, for example, and their interpretation of Islam, everything to serve the ruling party. And people need to be aware of that. And that's not something new. That's something that happened in the Muslim world very long time, 1,300 years ago. People started to have different interpretations that would suit the leaders of the Muslim world. Saying that, Sheikh Al-Azhar, he did have statements that are not very much aligned with the Egyptian government. He was criticized for it in many cases previously. But again, there's so much he can do. Imdad Kazim saying, Mahmoud, is the gas field still functional in Gaza? Look, they haven't explored yet. The only thing they've done is they handed gas exploration contracts. They handed them to multinational companies 2 weeks into this genocide. Talk about having something ready. And so all of a sudden you have these people ready for gas exploration. Well, you've just been attacked. So the gas exploration is on hold up until they end the war, really. If they don't end it, what are they going to do? JL is saying 80 countries sent their military top brass to Iran's embassy in Russia today. They were shown a presentation of Iran's attack on Israel. 80 countries, obviously not a flop. No. And clearly you're having a coalition here. And that's why I said in the beginning, you're talking about the beginning of a multipolar world. That's it. The day of US hegemony, that has ended clearly. And you're talking about a new era in the making. Imdad is also, sorry, I'm going back because I missed some of the... Imdad was saying before as well, Mahmoud, what will it take to make Europe take a more pro-Palestine stand? In terms of the people, everything is obvious. In terms of the people in power, obviously they're not all united in the same stance they take. Let's make that clear. However, they're bound, they're controlled by the same powers. Like when we talk about the leaders of Europe, they're just fronts. They are fronts, they are employees being told what to do from powers behind them. And the Zionist movement is very strong. You have many other industries, many other lobbies, right, of interest. And these people act as their fronts. Ricardo Mitchell and Native Waiter, thank you so much for your super thanks. Ricardo saying, brother, did you say the Mahdi was a fictional character? A fictional character that has no source in the Quran. This character started to come into practice, and the ideas of that came after the Sunni Shia split in Islam, after there was a fight for political power, where the people who thought Ali had the right to rule the Muslim world, and the other said, no, it's not Ali, you don't have to be a direct descendant. Many narrations that came from the hadith that were unrelated to the Quran. And many of the stories that come up from the Muslim world aren't originated in Islam, in the Quran. Even when you talk about massive previous hadiths, for example, because the whole hadith section from Islam, if you take, for example, Imam al-Bukhari, right, who's considered to be the most, that's obviously not to say that, everything is wrong. We're not saying that. But when we're talking about the ideology and the belief when it comes to, let's take, for example, al-Bukhari was the most correct narrator in Islam, in the Islamic tradition, of hadith, which are the narrations that are related to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Al-Bukhari gathered, they have two estimates. One of them is 400,000, 500,000 to 600,000 narrations that were related or linked to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And his book is called the Sahih, right? He narrated, so he authorized and approved, and he's considered by many scholars, at least in the Islamic Sunni world, to be the most accurate source. He narrated approximately 2,600 hadiths. 2,900 approximately if you take narrations that are very similar. If you take that percentage, you're talking about less than 0.5%. That's number one, just to establish where these narrations are coming from. Secondly, many of the narrations to do with that, the ideology of the end times and someone will come to rescue us, that came from a bab called Israeliyat, the Israelites, Israeli beliefs that came into Islam through the door of the hadith, which is very different to the Quran. Because from an Islamic perspective, and obviously many Muslims will argue with that, but from an Islamic perspective, the undisputed word of God is the Quran. The undisputed word of Allah is the Quran, right? Some argue, some say, no, if you talk about the hadith, you're talking about the same thing as the Quran, which is wrong, at least in my opinion. Because God said he protected the Quran as a holy book, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, he banned the writing of a hadith, which is where most of these narrations come from. Mahdi, Messiah, all of these things. Even the first Khalifas, Abu Bakr, Umar, peace be upon them, they banned these narrations at the time. Why? And why did the Prophet ban them? Because he didn't want them to be mixed up with the Quran. So I hope that elaborates. Native Water is saying, how is it possible that Saudi Arabia are so keen to strengthen their ties with Israel when they're so obsessed with destroying Al-Aqsa? Listen, the Saudi royal family, I mean, many of you will know by now. The Saudi royal family, firstly, they came into existence after the approval of the British Empire. After Sykes-Picot, obviously Saudi and the Royal Kingdom of Jordan, they both had agreements with the British. The Saudi government, the Saudi founder, Al Saud, he had a letter confirming to the British Empire at the time, because they wanted to set Israel. They wanted to give a nation state to the Jewish people in Palestine. They tried to do that with the Ottoman Empire. They were met with fierce resistance from Abdul Hamid II. He told them, it's not my ownership. Palestine is an ownership to the Muslim world. I can't tell you, I'm going to give you that, and you can form a Jewish state. However, the Saudi royal family, they said in that letter, by the way, and if you find it in Arabic, I'm not sure if you have some English translations too, they said, for the 1000th time, I reassure you, we confirm we can give a Jewish state to the Jewish people in Palestine. Now, did they know? Did they didn't know about the Zionist movement? That's a different story. That's a different story. However, they confirmed that. Us expecting something from, I mean, the only time they took a very noble approach when it comes to this was when King Faisal had an oil embargo. When King Faisal had an oil embargo in 1973, they assassinated him. And they didn't dare to do that again. Clearly, there was a planned assassination, and they were warned, don't ever try to do that again, or the same fate of King Faisal will happen to you. So we're not surprised by their position. And even if you want to look at, if you want to talk about Muslim heritage, right? If you want to talk about Muslim heritage, many of the Muslim heritage sites in Saudi Arabia were destroyed. So what are these people doing, really? Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, expecting something from them is quite, naive, really. And all of their traditional approach gets explained and reassured time after time. They might pay lip service for something here and there, but in terms of action, we haven't seen any action really from them. Unless you believed my sarcasm in the earthquake video. I read a great, John Doe, thank you so much for your super. You said, I read a great analysis on the systematic and very unfair underestimation of Israel's success in Gaza. The analysis says that the major success of Israel is that today 7-10 is no longer possible. See, that's not convincing Israelis though, right? And they say that to sell it to the public, but they're not even able to sell it to the public. Who's selling that to the public? The people around Gaza, they're not believing that for 1 second. That's why they're unable to go back, and they're refusing to go back. Now the Israeli government, they pledged 19 billion development, rebuilding everything with the areas surrounding Gaza. The people still don't believe it. Why? Because to them, you see, these are the opposite sides in Israel. To them, you haven't really destroyed the Hamas. What am I going to do? I'm not going to go back and try and face another 7th of October. And the same argument is with the people of the north, the 90,000. So you have approximately 140,000 surrounding Gaza. And then you have 90,000 in Lebanon. Both of them are not believing the state. Both of the populations are not believing the state. What are you going to do with them? You're not convincing them. You can convince yourself, or you can try and convince the people, but the fact of the matter is they're not convinced. They're not convinced by what you're saying because they've seen your lies. They've seen the Israelis being killed from Israel's ongoing genocide in Gaza. You see, the argument that we had previously is, if you care about your people, how can you go and bomb an area so heavily? That argument, that same sentiment, is shared by many Israelis, especially those who have family members in Gaza or people who they know. To them, how can you be genuine when you tell me you care about Israelis when you're bombing Gaza? And again, that's the highlight, again, the level of hypocrisy when it comes to mainstream media, giving Israel an exemption from the life loss of Israelis. From the life loss of Israelis. To the contrary, they'll go and tell Hamas, look at what you've done to your people. As in Israel strikes. Look at what you've done to your people. Flipping everything. Flipping illogical argument. Completely illogical. And they're not saying to Israel, you, by committing that, you're killing your own people. Right? They're not saying that to Israel. So the people in Israel are not believing them. Father, go fast. Thank you so much. Tashikoma, did you hear about the illegal states officers' fear of being dragged to the ICC? Well, they are worried about that, but they clearly are having the backing from the genocide supporters. Really. They're clearly believing that. They're supported by the countries that are complicit with them. They're telling them, we can't go, you're free to do whatever you want. Apart from that, if any of these countries were genuine when it comes to Israel, then would we be here? Would we be here? We wouldn't be here. If any of them were genuine in their worry about Israel committing a genocide, then why are you letting this man remain in power? Which is a similar argument that we had previously in the early days. That argument was, if Israel was a different country and they committed what they committed, you had a perfect recipe for foreign intervention. Why? Because they're blatantly committing crimes against humanity. You have a split society. You have a split military. You have a political division. So you can go ahead and you can take the side that you like or you want, and then you can put them a military coup. Perfect recipe. But obviously Israel is exempt. That's not to say that they didn't try to do it indirectly or in like a soft manner. Okay? When you had Blinken coming to Israel, like how would you explain that? He came to Israel. He told Hagari, I want to meet with you, the IDF chief. Unprecedented move, by the way. Netanyahu and his government, they clocked onto it. They told him, how comes you're asking to meet the IDF chief on your own? We're not a banana republic, they said at the time. They didn't allow him to. And not only that, they didn't allow Anthony Blinken to go to Karm Abu Salim crossing. Why did they not allow him? They didn't allow him because apparently it wasn't safe for him to go there. They didn't allow him because apparently it wasn't safe for him to go there. So they started restricting these people from even moving. And you're talking about the US, their biggest supporter. However, if it happened in any other country, hell, if it happened in Iran, what would you do? If a cat gets scratched in Iran, they'll call for regime change. If a dog loses its tail in Iran, they'll call for regime change the next day. Iran can't protect animal rights. If it was another country and you had a fly losing a wing, oh my God, they don't know how to protect animal rights. We need to go and overthrow the government. But when Israel kills over 34,000 innocent civilians, they can get away with it. Okay, they can get away with it and nothing would happen. Talal is asking, can you share your opinion about the Texit wanting to branch out of the United States? Yeah, it's an interesting notion. We spoke about it previously. I mean, many people were saying if the US will have a civil war. Look, there are many paramilitary groups in the US. It's scary. You have mass shootings in the US, like mass shootings to levels where you don't see anywhere across the world. People leave the US because they're scared of mass shootings, by the way, if they have children. But it's more likely that the United States of America will be the not so United States of America because of the vast differences. And Texas was an example. Obviously, they have a different view when it comes to immigration. I mean, I've had some of my American fellows elaborate on that previously with regards to immigration. Although the measures that were taken by Trump were like, in many cases, draconian measures, and I think many people use immigration as like a scapegoat to their own problems, really, blaming everything on the immigrants. Although every country under the sun almost was built by immigrants. Do you know what I mean? But there are many differences in US states when it comes to policies, ideas. And that's very evident when it comes to even like things like abortion. You have many people leaving certain states because of abortion laws. You can't have an abortion. So that could be the case, really. That could be the case. And that looks like the last one. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Again, thank you everyone for joining me so much. Thank you everyone who sent me super thanks. I'm sorry if I missed any of your comments because the chat keeps going up and down. But I'll be with you again hopefully tomorrow too. I had another video published at 11. You can go ahead and watch it. I might have another one as well. Apart from that, again, thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your day, night, and weekend. And I will hopefully see you soon in the next video. Take care.